Hello, my name is Random Chris. I am randomly moderating a panel, which I found out 2 minutes ago. Sorry about that. Is music making becoming even more easy? Before I begin, if I may, who here writes music? Snow, can you join us? I just feel like music isn't just made by men, you see, so it's probably important.
Well done.
To ensure we have at least some view.
I'm going to ask the audience a question quickly. In the pitching sessions yesterday, I was a little upset with all the hard questioning when women were pitching that the men didn't get. Anyone notice that? I certainly did.
I grilled 2 of the girls on one thing, but because I didn't understand what
so
they
it was you.
I was
Okay,
confused about something.
I just thought it was a little unfortunate that they got really hard questions and the guys didn't.
Yeah, I mean, that's a complete... We can change the topic if people are interested to. It might naturally go that way anyway.
There's a lot to be said about that subject.
There's a lot to be said. And, you know, for the record, like, some of the best music in this world, from my experience, the best music in the world are made by people in struggle. And I tell you what, minorities and women right now have the greatest struggle and are making the best flippin' music. So there we go. Right. Is making music becoming even more easy? I'm going to ask a first question from everybody, if that's okay. Just briefly say who you are and then answer this question. The question is, what's the last piece of music you made? And what tool did you use to make it? Snow.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Snow. And my musical journey now, it's been quite long. It's almost 8 to 10 years. And I started playing pretty much in a punk band in Bulgaria. And high school punk band that completely with our own effort, we managed to fund an entire album and record it the way we wanted it to be recorded. The last piece of music I wrote was a couple of days ago. And I mainly use an acoustic guitar, so it was on a guitar. Cool. Yeah.
Cool. All right, the last time I recorded anything was 2005 with Gang of Four, my band, because we were out of our deals pretty much on the master side. So we decided to basically hit the road again. We hadn't been out on the road for a very long time. And we just put together our favorite songs of our careers called Return the Gift, and recorded that in Andy Gill's studio in London. And then we owned the rights to all of that, and took it on the road, sold it on the road, blah, 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 blah. And of course it got into all the systems, no big problem. Distributed by V2, licensed it just for 3 years, and get it all back. So that's, we're a 4-piece band, post-punk band, so there was drums, bass, and a guitar, and John singing. That's my last time making anything.
I try to actually write, if I can. I try to write every day. For many years, I started out also kind of like Snow, playing like in a punk band when I was a teenager. Still play in the bloody punk band years later, but went through a phase where you write a lot when you're young because you got all kinds of ideas and you got a lot to say and you think you're, very clever. And then, you kind of get fairly successful and people listen to you, and then you sort of sit in your chair and you're a little bit more comfortable and you start to, enjoy the praise that people send to you. And then you kind of slack off on actually writing. And it kind of came back to me after a while, realizing that it was taking us 5 years instead of 18 months to write new records. But also this idea that if you're a creator, if you're an artist, the idea is to create art, and you have to keep doing that in order to be a real artist. You can say that, maybe the last, Rolling Stones records or the last Paul McCartney records or whatever are not as good as what they did earlier in their career, but at least they kept writing, at least they kept creating, and that to me was, so I kind of tried to kick myself in the butt and grab the guitar every day or every second day at least and write. So the last one I wrote would be a couple days ago, and I just take an acoustic guitar, muddle, melodies and lyric ideas over chords that I'm playing, and I usually stick my cell phone with
That's interesting.
What's the thing there? The little, when you record. What the hell is it called?
Record.
Yeah. There's
Press
an
record.
app there. There's an app thing. What's it called? I can't remember the
Voice
name.
recorder.
I'm like this is funny because I'm at a tech conference and I'm like the most useless tech person in the entire world. But anyway, there's a little thing, and so I just stick the phone on the top of the guitar, so it hears my voice and my guitar, and then I just record all my notes, voice notes. That's it. And then I record those ideas there, and then I re-listen to them, and then I can sort of start to make records from that.
Interesting.
Hi, I'm not really a musician, but I do play guitar, and I think the last thing that was original that I played was before my son was born and he was still in his mummy's tummy, and just, play something to him and, show him that I'm here. And he still loves it. So 3 years later, that's the last thing I did.
Congratulations. That's really cool. So, I always find it's really interesting to have a MusicTech conference without really speaking about music, right? It's just a bit nuts. Otherwise, it's just a tech conference about people who like music. So, if apps are here to help songwriters make more music, what is that app actually supposed to achieve to help someone make music? I don't mean make sound, I mean make music, right? So what does an app need to do to really help with that process, do you believe? That's an open question.
Just amplify, right? Or do anything that helps you achieve what you want to achieve, or it's basically helps you move on in the creative process. I mean, I don't know, I've seen so many great apps and companies yesterday here, and I got to play around with some of those new musical instruments. Dualo and Tonic was trying to amplify guitars, and I don't know, the guys from Fratello make it really easy for you to actually learn the craft of playing guitar. And I think all of those companies and apps are really helping musicians at different stages in their progress, so that's useful.
I think that's a very interesting point that you're making, and I have a bit of a very old school vision of how music should be written, and I feel like, doesn't technology get us to a point in which we're slightly cheating as artists? Very simple, it doesn't even include technology, but I've seen people write lyrics in which they come up with a cool sentence, and they go on a thesaurus and search for a word that's going to rhyme with the last one, and this is how they build their lyrics. And to me, it's you're cheating. You're not really telling me a real story. You're just, I don't know, trying to make a hit maybe, but...
Yeah, I'm on your side there too. I think that, I just had two great conversations since I arrived here today. An interview, which was great, and a chat with my new friend back there. I had this thought just because of the first interview came into my head is when do we reach peak music technology? Because right now, no one's writing songs for audiences. They're writing songs for playlists. So I don't think we need to help people with that, because it's all becoming just what would the word be? It's just sort of.
But are we not? Isn't that just not an argument to say that we don't make music with the tools that are available anymore? Is that arguably the same statement?
I think it is. I mean, my problem with playlists.
Does that not mean we're out of date?
No, I don't think so. I think that the playlist issues right now are, yes, you listen to a playlist on Spotify with 100 songs in it. That's great, but you never go deeper than that one song. So you don't go to albums anymore, right? Why would you? You just go to the next playlist and the next playlist and the next playlist, which is like the new album. And I mentioned Drake in the interview. It's like if Drake puts out 28 songs as a double album on Spotify and he gets into multiple playlists, he's going to get paid really well. So
let me take that question a little further, if I may. It's kind of, if you now imagine a world, which is obviously not going to happen, where virtual reality becomes a thing that's good, Like, does the concept of an app for helping you make music or an instrument, does that entire concept paradigm change? And if it does, how?
I feel like I'd hate to see that arrive, to be honest. Right? I mean, look at. I know. I'm pushing back on you, but "Entertainment" by Gang of Four was one of the most critically acclaimed albums ever, and even today, 40 years later, it still turns up in all the, best post-punk albums of this, and this. So we didn't need an app to create that album. We did take a lot of fighting in the studio, but there's no apps for that either.
By app, sorry, go ahead.
No, but you were using the technology that was available at the time, for your, process.
Well,
and
actually, let me stop you there. The engineers, yes, they had all the reverbs and compression and all that, and every time the guy went near it, we're just slapping his hand, like, we don't want reverb on this album.
No,
but there's a technology that you can use or not use.
Exactly.
Right.
It's your choice.
So the recording studio has not changed much, other than going more digital, which is fine. Or you've got your Neve desks with their own computers to, when you're mixing, just like set it, off you go.
It brings up a few different thoughts in my mind, what you're asking, because I'm kind of like living in the space that I guess Dave lives in, where on the creative side, music is coming from not just the heart and the soul, but from emotion, from a place of needing to express an emotion. And that's where I just don't get Scott's thing about, someday a number one song will be written by, a computer. And I'm like, who fucking cares? I don't want to listen to a fucking song written by a computer. A computer has nothing to say. It's not saying anything. It's not speaking to me. It has absolutely no emotional content. So there's absolutely zero interest in that to me. But I have noticed that a lot of the younger generation obviously is using not just apps, but technology to write music, to create music. And I was with a young girl from Madagascar that would just sign. She was like 18, and she literally just writes lyrics and melodies, and sings them into her phone. And then to try to create a song or a sort of song, she'll use some sort of an app in her computer and have sort of a virtual keyboard pop up and fiddle around with pushing buttons until notes are created, until chords are created that fit under the melody that she's just written. So it's interesting because on the one hand she's kind of doing what old school songwriters would have done, which is to take chords and melody and lyric as a base, but then using her computer to compensate for the fact that she basically can't play an instrument.
But that's a different statement. Like that, I really love this topic because there's, I tried to be an artist, but I became too ugly. Oh. And there are plenty of artists I work with on a regular basis who are more attractive than I am. And but the thing is about being an artist that I understand isn't what you do with your hands, it's what you do with your mind.
Sure.
And so if you can shortcut the mind to the outcome, is that more or less of being an artist?
Well, I would just say that there's also emotion in how you play and how you interpret. So I don't think you can necessarily, the idea of the robot playing the keyboard again, that just does not work for me. It's something that exists, but it's like the McDonald's version of making music to me. It's.
I agree on the emotion part, because I think for me a big portion of being an artist is to have the guts and the vulnerability to actually show that emotion on stage. Some of the greatest songs are written by 3 chords, and you could even say they sound alike, but it's the way they're delivered on the stage. And sometimes I really struggle with can technology help that delivery be better? Because it can improve the process of songwriting, but what about the delivery? What you said about this girl from Madagascar sounds great, but then how do you deliver this song? That 50% of it is with the help of a computer.
Yeah, and also,
Things like it.
I mean, there's a cultural part to everything as well, right? I think the long-term Gang of Four album, always surfacing over each decade. It's like if you listen to that album, there's a cultural thing going on. Where we were called post-punk because we didn't want to wear all the stupid clothes that punks are wearing. That sounds a bit harsh, but we just didn't want to do that. But lyrically, that album stands up on its own today, and production-wise, it stands up as if it was recorded yesterday. So it was all part of the culture because of the politics in the United Kingdom at the time, and the punk rock uprising, the uprising of really cool independent labels. This fed into everything we did. Everything we did.
Can I ask? I have one question.
That's not a computer, basically.
Yeah, might not fit completely, but don't you think that to a certain extent, maybe technology that's supposed to empower musicians can also put us in a box? Like, I spent 3 years studying music production, and everything our lecturers were trying to teach us in the studio was like, if you want to record this amp, you have to use this microphone. If you want to do this, use that. And it's like, at some point, at the end of the third year, you're like, okay, so if I want to do this, I need to use that mic and this. And the beauty of music is just like, take random stuff and put them in a context that it's completely different.
Right, but
that random thing, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what you're actually explaining now is like the early punk rock bands in the United Kingdom didn't know how to play. I mean, Hugo, our drummer, didn't really know how to play the drums. I mean, he was great eventually, but we kind of had to help him out. But there's something great about that though, because like if you listen to the drumming on Entertainment, it's not just four on the floor, boom chat, boom chat. We made it so that he could really play in a different way that fit our rhythms that we wanted to play, which was inspired by dub reggae actually in Chapeltown in Leeds, where we were based.
So taking this a step forward, that the kind of the younger generations of music makers and songwriters, they will be born into certain types of technology, whether we like it or not. Us as instrumental purists, to some extent, are purists because we grew up with that as the way we made music. But we have kind of technologies, like we've seen here. So we have, Voclia from George over there, which is, being able to almost beatbox into a microphone and express it as a style of an instrument, and it will understand which instrument you're trying to replicate. If we're seeing these kinds of technologies people growing up into, is that literally changing the nature of being an artist, or is this just a natural and positive growth of what technology
I would see it just as a variation and an evolution. I think that you grow up with the cultural and technological context that you grow up in, and I'm older, but I work with, because I work at a record label and manage bands, I work with a lot of, like the girl who's 18 and a guy who's 26 and a guy who's 22. And, they all grew up in a very different age than me. And for them to not only use technology to create, but also use technology to perform. But the one thing that was interesting was I had an artist who was sort of a singer-songwriter, but really liked, electronic beats and stuff. And so he was, pulling a little bit into the James Blake world. And he started out performing, singer, just voice guitar alone on stage. And he wanted to stay solo, and it was easier for him to tour solo. But when he made his album, there was a lot of beats and electronic stuff in there and bass synths. And he wanted that in his show. So we got him, a pad, and then he could literally, put the music in. But when he first started, he had a lot of sequencing playing, and then he would just play guitar and sing over top of it. So there was
glorified
this phantom
karaoke, right?
Oh, it was horrible. It was like a phantom band playing, and it was like karaoke, and it was awful. And we literally told him right away, stop doing that immediately. And then we got him, this pads where he could play the parts, loop them, and people watched him loop the parts and change the drum beats into electronic beats that he would play and loop, and all of a sudden it was really good. So I think there's but the one thing I wanted to say was that people loved watching him play it There's a human fascination and interest and connection to watching somebody actually do something.
I couldn't agree more. Has anybody seen, I can't remember what the song is called, it's mind blank, but the Justin Timberlake video that he did as a duo with, where it's basically a live recording, but it's a full production video, live recording of him starting with this Native Instruments kind of machine, and then he's going up and down these lifts, and all of a sudden there's 100 performers. I can't imagine how many takes it would have taken for that to actually happen. But the fact that you believe, at least, that it was done live, there's nothing that special about it. But in the sense, if it was just a pre-made thing, you'd be like, yeah, it's fine. But knowing that it was done as a performance makes your jaw drop. And are these technologies helping us make more jaw-dropping moments? You see, is where I'm trying to get to. Like, that's my personal view. I was just trying to see if I can get you guys to say it. Stefan, like, how do you fit into this equation from your point of view?
Funnily enough, I'm actually more on the marketing side of things. I guess I would have actually fit in better in the other panel, to be honest. But since I'm here, I agree with you guys that it's obviously nice to be a purist about the stuff that you grew up with and the instruments, etc. But I mean, at the end of the day, technology is there to help you push yourself forward, and if that's the new thing, then let's not criticize it and go like, no, that can't be good because it's just because it's using new stuff. I mean,
I'm certainly not. Hello. Yeah, I'm certainly not anti-technology. I mean, I've been in music tech for almost 2 decades or more, and I think you're right. If there's something that's very, very useful, right, and gets to the point that you're trying to make of like, wow, that's the best experience in songwriting I've ever heard, then fine. But it may not be the end all. It's just like I have a feeling that whoever's making music, and you mentioned artists, right? Or the art of making music. It's that's something you can't really put your finger on. Like, why does Bruce Springsteen do what he does compared to a young up-and-coming musician right now that makes great music? And there's plenty of them out there. Then you look at the hip-hop scene. They're just kind of taken over, like hip-hop in the United States is bigger than rock music now. And their events are like just beyond, just like incredible. Like, and that just all thought through usually by one person with this team or her team, like Beyonce or Kendrick, Chance the Rapper. The list goes on. Frank Ocean, Frank, for instance, is quite a hero of mine, I'd say, because just he plays these big festivals, gets on there and puts couches on the stage, and his band members are just lying around chatting, and then out in the audience, they're all lining up at his custom T-shirt printing place. It's like that you don't need technology all the time.
I think technology can be great as long as the artist is still the one leading. Yeah. Like the artist has to lead the piece of music or whatever in a certain direction. We shouldn't get to a point in which we let the technology to lead the creative process.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree.
And this neatly segues into my closing question. Thank you, Snow.
It's over.
So, I mean, like, we started a little early, so I'll give us all the benefit to go and watch England play football. If we are, at least the 4 of us here, we've made music and continue to make music. Stefan, you once made music while your child was in the tummy of its mother.
Child in the tummy.
Let's go back to one of the first talks that ever happened at this particular conference, which was Scott Cohen basically smashing all hopes and dreams of every artist that's ever existed. But he did make a really, really important point, which I fully agree with. A lot of music tech that is being made by people who didn't succeed in what they really wanted to do, which is making music, and is now so, well, okay, I'll make an app that makes me sound better, basically. And I mean that with affection, because that's just kind of the truth. I'm sorry. at the Rattle like hundreds of applications a month, and it's always yet another app to use your finger to make a guitar sound. I'm like, I don't care. But if, as music makers and as a music fan, say one thing you wish existed, what do you wish existed that you know doesn't exist and is not your own company if you have any interest in any of these businesses? Let's start from the music fan point of view. Stefan.
Jesus, that's a really tough one. Think of something that doesn't exist at the moment that I wish it would. Wow. In music.
Or something you wish would happen. You don't need to necessarily know how it would work. You know, think Back to the Future style here.
Sorry, it's just like my business background is just shining through. I just wish there was more transparency in music reporting and, you know, payments, etc.
From a fan's point of view, do you want that too?
Yeah, of course, because I want the artists to be credited, to be, you know, remunerated properly.
Is it that you want to know it's happened, or is it that you want it to happen whether you know it or not?
I would like to know it. I think that's
what
part
I
of the
believe.
Transparency. Yeah. But it's just a general, you know, like everybody should be, you know, properly remunerated for their work. So
yeah, I mean that's a big deal. But it is happening. So that's arrived, right? So STEM, you may have heard of STEM, and I partnered with them with my new company a year ago.
Uh-oh, you've crossed the red line.
I know, maybe I have, yeah.
Da, da, da.
Well, look, they only take 5% and they pay out...
no pitching, everyone.
I'm not pitching myself. I'm pitching this company called STEM that looked into the accounting side of how royalties are, I get these giant statements that the mailman and mailwoman has to drop off at the house, and it's all streaming, and it's like pennies, and these guys looked into that and said, this is ridiculous.
Of course.
It wasn't just ridiculous about how low the income was, it was ridiculous about how the way they accounted for it, and it's still sending out big blocks of paper, and you don't have a dashboard
with the perforated edges on the side.
So STEM's dashboard is amazing, right? I can see what Frank Ocean, he sampled 2 of our songs and on the last album, and I can see in the dashboard how much money that's making me.
That's pretty cool.
Because normally when it comes to tax time, I have to call Warner Chappell and say, all right, you sent me the 1099 and I didn't get that money, so if you don't mind sending the money too, I'll keep talking to you.
I hear. Okay.
So the systems are going to be upended somewhat, I believe, where you've got to be more transparent than these opaque contracts. Like, I don't know from the record companies, Warner Brothers and EMI, that have our copyrights right now, I don't know how much they're getting from streaming, right? They don't tell you. And they take 50% off the top because it's a license, and that's why artists are complaining.
Totally get it.
It's hard. The money's not coming in unless you're on a playlist like Drake, or get on a playlist that Drake's on, and then you might start seeing income.
So somehow finding the nice segue to take it back, which I can't do. Franz.
Yes.
What would you wish existed as a maker of music?
I'm blanking on the question. I'm like, I think life is really good. I think it's.
Finally, someone's happy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally happy. I mean, I as a music maker, I wish, in an ideal utopian world, I wish that, worldwide government law was passed to force ISPs and mobile phones to have to pay some form of money for permitting the content of the music to get to the user, because in my opinion, as a very kind of left-wing thinking person. I don't like the idea of some people being really dirt poor and failing to be able to do what they want to do in life, and then have massive multinational corporations making billions and billions of profits, and someone telling me, well, why should we pay for that? In my opinion, that doesn't fucking work. So it's like, I don't care if it's good business sense or it makes sense from an economic standpoint or from a shareholder standpoint. In my opinion, it doesn't work as a society, but then again, we live in a society where the 1% screwing us, all across the board, not just in music. But that would be my wish.
Got it. Go on, Snow.
I've had quite a few tools to use when I've made music, but I think there's always more to want, and I think it's good if we manage to maintain a state where we're pissed off at things and we want more, because this is how you make great art. And what I wish from technology, I use a lot of effect pedals. It's like, I want to be able to have full control with as less buttons as possible. Like, I want just 2 buttons or 2 knobs and make it sound crazy. Yeah, I know there are amazing startups in here, so yeah, it would be great if something like this comes up.
Super cool. Well, I had fun. I hope you all had fun. Yay! This was such a joy. Thank you for having me, and thank you so much for coming on the panel, even if you weren't on the list of men. Take care. Thank you very much.